Number 10, who does what and when? I mean, this one we kind of have an idea for, but even the working theories based on the novels and the games don't really make a ton of sense in practice, especially if you try to put them together. Initially in the trilogy, it's made to seem like Henry is the brains behind the brilliant animatronics, while William is more the suit, the charismatic business entrepreneur that is the driving force behind Fazbear Entertainment. And yet after the death of Henry, William must be the one creating the animatronics, right? But also, William must be operating under some kind of pseudonym, as he should also be a wanted criminal at this point. And then if William and Henry started Fazbear, I mean, who's running it now? Were they both still running it for a time together, even after all the scandals and all the stuff between them? Or maybe just one of them was running it. Or maybe they were both sort of running it. Is William somehow still involved in the decisions the business makes, operating in, I don't know, some disguised manner so people don't know who he is? This is all logistics, but when you get into logistics with FNAF, things quickly get confusing. Also, if there's like a new CEO, do they have like any idea of like what's going on? Are they aware that the animatronics are dangerous? Because then there is the lore from Special Delivery and the emails there, which makes me think they don't know, but that they have to deal with it, and it's just like, wow, there's a lot going on here. How does the business run? I need like another instructional video, please, on corporate Fazbear Entertainment. Quick. Number 9, Jeremy Fitzgerald. Another one that remains a mystery is Jeremy Fitzgerald. Was he just a poor soul stuck working at Freddy's, or was he somehow connected to the Aftons? Is he the same Jeremy mentioned in Help Wanted, or is that just a coincidence? In the world of FNAF, we don't really like to believe in just coincidences. And so it's likely that Jeremy is another piece to the intricate puzzle of FNAF that we just simply don't know quite where to place yet. And friends, if you are loving this video as much as I am loving communicating it to you, please be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Every time you click like on one of our videos, somewhere a clue is found to solve one of these mysteries. Give us more clues. Click like. Number 8, how did Michael Afton survive? We can kind of chalk this one up to suspension of disbelief in storytelling, if we wanted, but what fun would that be? There must be more going on here than just required suspension of disbelief in a story about souls that possess animatronics, making them eternally vengeful and murderous, right? After Michael is scooped, Ennard wears him as a sort of skin suit disguise, but Michael still somehow survives this experience. Even after his flesh is rotted and he's upchucked the nuts and bolts and other components of Ennard from within him, he collapses and then somehow he seems to come right back to life, with Circus Baby's voice reassuring him that he won't die. But why? How? What? Is Michael a robot? Because honestly, friends, I think he might be a robot. Number 7, Ness. We all know Vanessa, who is supposed to be one of the principal characters in the newest FNAF game, Security Breach, but is Vanessa also Ness from the emails seen in the FNAF AR mobile game Special Delivery? It seems like the answer could be yes, based on the creepy context we see from these emails sent to her. It also seems to be implied in these emails that Ness, or Vanessa, if it is her, was a security transfer. These hidden clues even give us an idea of Vanessa's date of birth, with her username in some emails being Nessie97, as in 1997, the year she was born. Number 6, Circus Baby. Why did William Afton make an animatronic for his daughter that in effect could kill her, and was kind of built to kill her? So wait a minute, what does this mean? Was Circus Baby made for this actual intention, or did William simply make a mistake when he was creating her? Was she modded after to become the perfect accomplice to William's crimes, or did he build her with that intention and simply claim that she was a gift for his daughter? Was it like a weird cover-up? Was his daughter the one who actually was maybe into kidnapping to begin with, which is why he designed Circus Baby like that? Like it was for her, so it really was for her, but like she was the one that was into it? It's getting confusing in my brain. Oh man. Could Elizabeth Afton really be the mastermind behind all of this? Or was she perhaps just part of an experiment? An experiment William Afton was willing to use his own daughter for, if she really is William's real daughter at all. Basically, I just have a lot of questions about why Circus Baby was made, and I think you do too. And sorry, I know I didn't really come close to any answers with this point, I just spun more webs of craziness, but there's a lot of potential here for where we could go with the explanations, and there's a lot of confusing options for what could be going on here, so that's that. I know it's crazy to say that Elizabeth could be the mastermind behind all of this, like I know how crazy that sounds, but what if Elizabeth is the mastermind behind all of this? It was Elizabeth all along.
Halfway through into number 5, Dead Afton. Okay, here we go again. There's gonna be so many mad comments on this video. William Afton didn't die in the spring locking incident that we see in FNAF 3's 8-bit minigames, okay? He didn't. I know there are still plenty of people who think that he did die, but he didn't. MatPat even said it himself. Since the majority of people who are saying this are also the ones who say I'm wrong because MatPat said whatever, okay? He said in one of his FNAF 3 or 4 timeline theories or something that to note that you don't see William die in the suit, okay? You see him convulsing because of the spring locking and then twitching, but he never stops moving. And thanks to the man in room 1280, we know that William was being kept alive by the spirit of one of his victims that the book calls Andrew, but the game's called The One You Should Not Have Killed. And we know that these are meant to help fill in blanks from the past thanks to a Reddit post from Scott from 2020 saying, "Let me at least say this, future games will look forward, but the novels will fill in some blanks from the past." So this book single-handedly gives us a reason as to how William survived all those years other than Remnant, okay? The One You Should Not Have Killed was possessing him, and might still be. We don't know.
Number 4, Mrs. Afton. If there even is one, at this point, I'm not so sure. The mystery here is basically all about who is Mrs. Afton, and is there a Mrs. Afton? If so, what happened to her? Is she still possibly alive today? Anytime we have a good old nuclear family introduced in the media, many people want to know who their parents are. But they especially want to know if half of that duo happens to be a serial killer who made a whole franchise and army of animatronics to help him. Some people refer to Mrs. Afton as Clara, believing that the character that we see in the soap opera, The Immortal and the Restless, serves as an allusion to her, and possibly an allusion to her story. However, we still don't know for sure if Mrs. Afton exists or ever existed. Someone has to be the mother of these children though, right? Unless they're robots. I'm just saying. I'm not saying they're robots, but they could be.
Getting close to the end in number 3, FNAF 6. FNAF 6 is another one of those ending sequences, where the series looks like it could have ended, and while slightly more convoluted, it would have been okay. We would have hammered out the rest eventually. The FNAF 6 ending, though, was indeed the end of multiple animatronics. Elizabeth, Charlotte, and Ennard were all released into FNAF Fire, as well as Michael, who stays to burn, and Henry, who stayed so nobody would remember this place or this story. However, we know one escaped. Springtrap, or Scraptrap, William Afton himself, managing to evade death once again, and it wouldn't be until later where we found out and understood how, and yet we figured he would be back. He always comes back, and now, with nobody to stand against him, he's free to do whatever he wants. Henry isn't fighting him, Michael isn't fighting him, they both thought he would burn, but he's free, as free as he can be while being stuck inside a video game world. For now.
Number 2, why does William kill? This has to be one of the greatest mysteries of all time. We know that William has children, or at least appears to have children, who acknowledge him as well as their father. He is one of the co-creators of a restaurant franchise advertised as being family friendly. By all accounts, on paper, he'd seem like a family man, like a sweetheart. And yet, he is compelled to take the lives of others, and because of this, has actually corrupted his animatronics, also causing them to become murderous. But why? For what purpose? Did some event in his life trigger this change? Was it the loss of his wife? And why does he feel compelled to target kids when he himself has kids? Number 1, the horrific timeline. Many gamers, avid fans, and content creators have tried to piece together this timeline, and yet it remains one of the greatest mysteries of all. Not just of FNAF, of all. We have some details that help us to solidify when events take place, but then there are also contradictions within even some of the best timelines. Not only that, but there are a lot of holes, or rather potholes. Kinda like a plot hole, but a little different. Unsuspecting holes that we didn't even know existed, usually, until a new date is given, a new location spotted that causes us to fall into one. A big plot pothole. You'd think with more information we would get a more clear idea of the timeline, but it just seems to only make the ever-expanding history of Freddy's seem more convoluted and confusing.
Number 10, Sister Location Intro. At the beginning of Sister Location, we get a major clue as to where the authorities are at when it comes to their views and suspicions surrounding William Afton. This is definitely something that is very noticeable, as it's dialogue over top of a cutscene showcasing close-ups of Circus Baby. So not super hidden, but it's also just something that I find doesn't get talked about a lot, so kind of hidden in that regard, if that makes sense. Maybe other people don't think it's a huge deal, but I think it's pretty important in regards to tracking William Afton's story. Based on the interrogation we are privy to, it seems as though William Afton might be the main suspect in a missing persons case, implying that the authorities are already onto him and may have even at some point caught him, or William simply went on the run after this and remained incognito for as long as necessary, as he was a wanted man. Either way, it sheds some important light on just how dangerous and potentially well known he is by the police in the FNAF universe. Makes you wonder how anything related to these animatronics could have ever been allowed to continue. Number 9, Lefty. Lefty is the animatronic that you can salvage or purchase in Pizzeria Simulator. We'd later learn that its initials were the clue to a dark secret that lurks within the animatronic, revealing that it is not alone or ever really kinda sentient on its own either. Lefty stands for Lure, Encapsulate, Fuse, Transport, and Extract. Initially, you might think this refers to Lefty being an animatronic used for kidnapping and capturing the souls of innocent victims, and that could also be part of the meaning behind the acronym name, but it also happens to be the animatronic that contains within it the puppet, who used Lefty to sneak into the pizzeria and resides within the animatronic. With this animatronic, you get two really for the price of one. It's definitely creepy, but also kind of efficient, at least for the purpose of collecting all the animatronics in order to free the souls trapped within them, which we find out was actually our purpose this entire time. After all, the puppet is one of the animatronics whose soul does need to be freed. So yeah, let Charlie be free! And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want us to discuss more hidden clues, secrets, and all those good bits of lore, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Every time you click that like, a new secret is revealed. It's true. Someone somewhere is reading something and is like, oh, I figured out another piece of the puzzle. Number 8, The Immortal and the Restless. The Immortal and the Restless is the name of the soap opera that we get to watch on our time away from work in between shifts in Sister Location. And by we, I mean us playing as the protagonist, Eggs Benny, aka Michael Afton. The Immortal and the Restless is believed, however, to be more than just good ol' entertainment. Many fans believe it in itself is a hidden clue and allusion to the real-world life of William Afton and Mrs. Afton. Real-world life. Clara is meant to be a stand-in for Mrs. Afton, and Vlad is meant to be a stand-in for William, aka Mr. Afton. Vlad is cold and turns away from Clara, who insists that her son is actually his and the result of their love affair, but Vlad remains in denial. People think that this is meant to symbolize William Afton turning away from his family and his wife, thereby driving Clara, aka Mrs. Afton, away. It's unclear as to if he actually refused to acknowledge Michael as his own son, or if Mrs. Afton actually set the house that they lived in on fire, but most people think it's all meant to be more symbolic than literal.
Number 7, Ultimate Custom Night. What is even the real lore behind Ultimate Custom Night? Is it some kind of hell dimension where William Afton is the protagonist and is constantly punished night after night for his sins? Or is it just a game and there's really no lore here at all? It's just a fun, completely customizable FNAF gameplay experience. Or is it possible UCN is neither of these things, but there's actually something else going on here in terms of the story? With so many of the other games helping to build the world and lore of FNAF, it's really hard for fans to dismiss Ultimate Custom Night as just a fun experience. Besides, some of the animatronics say what feel like pretty targeting and specific things, which makes us want to believe even more that UCN has a greater place in the story of FNAF.
Number 6. Hidden Compartment. Blueprints from Sister Location revealed this disturbing and hidden bit of lore. Through them, we learned of the hidden compartments within some animatronics' chest cavities. Freddy had one, and Circus Baby had one as well. And the other surprising fact is that we found these compartments because they seemed to be full, or at least were imagined as being full in these blueprints. With the chest cavities or stomachs of these animatronics, we saw little bodies curled up into a fetal position. It seemed like these animatronics were indeed made for kidnapping unsuspecting and naive victims. Small victims.
Halfway through number 5, Bite of 83. The Bite of 83, not to be confused with the Bite of 87, is one of the most confusing moments in a timeline sense. Like, we know it happened in 1983, but what happened to the crying child after? Does William indeed put him back together? Does he possess something? What happened to crying child? But this is an important moment too, because despite the confusion between 1987 and 1983, this would only drive William deeper into his madness, causing him to do unspeakable and unexpected things, like turn his son into a robot and give him false memories of killing his younger sibling so he wouldn't go back to a Freddy's location, naming the new robot version Michael, for instance. Or by just going on even more of a killing spree, not caring about the consequences of his actions because what else does he have to lose? And if crying child does end up possessing the security logbook or even Golden Freddy, then that only goes to serve this point too. The Bite of 83 is a horrific but important moment.
Number 4. Ballora's Song. The fate of Mrs. Afton is something that has been alluded to a few times in the games, but something that has yet been undefined is who exactly she is. We don't even know her name, nor do we know exactly her relationship to William Afton. We assume that the two were romantically involved and have children. Part of the reason why we assume the romance is because of this clue. That is the animatronic Ballora and her song. Ballora sings about missing someone who it seems has withdrawn into themselves. Before, she and this person were once happy, but now they have shut her out and resigned themselves to loneliness, closing up. It is possible this song is meant to represent the separation that happened between William Afton and Mrs. Afton, or is meant to symbolize his grief over losing her.
Getting close to the end into number 3, Mrs. Afton death. The story of Mrs. Afton, if there even is one, is a mystery that we've been debating for ages. A story that hasn't even had a slight amount of explanation, okay? No references, no mention of an actual name, nothing. So naturally, there are theories about it. However, these theories have no actual base in-game lore and instead focus on FNAF animated music videos for the most part, and stories that are treated as canon and sometimes scarily heavily so. The truth is, okay, we have no idea what happened to Mrs. Afton currently. We don't know if there even was a Mrs. Afton, or if it was just a baby mama, or if William had like a surrogate so that he could have his own children and just paid some woman to have his kid. Hell, okay, these kids may just be adopted for all we know. Either way, for some reason, and I don't know what video really caused this to pick up, a load of people think that Mrs. Afton died in a car accident and then is now possessing Ballora. I mean, it's a possibility, certainly, but that doesn't mean that it's canon. This is still a problem to this day, with many people just a couple of days ago trying to tell me what happened, mostly treating their statements as fact. A couple examples if I may. Quote, William killed Mrs. Afton, he stuffed her body into Ballora. Or, William Afton killed Mrs. Afton and Mrs. Afton now is Ballora in Sister Location. And Mrs. Afton is Ballora now though. That last one was meant to be a fact, like there is no interpreting it otherwise. They intended that on being like a correction. All of these are equally possible, okay, but nothing is actually canon. And as far as we know for certain, Baby is the only possessed Sister Location animatronic. And I think that the fact that there's so much fighting against what actually happened to Mrs. Afton indicates that none of this is true. The other animatronics may have like the remnant in them from the original Missing Children robots, but that's it. A Ballora themed staff robot being present at a table in Security Breach only means that Ballora was meant to represent the mother, not that she possesses the animatronic. Are we saying that like William is possessing the staff bot and so is Crying Child? And yeah, no, we're not. So like, she's not possessing Ballora. That's not a thing. Ballora isn't possessed.
Number 2. Mrs. Afton's fate? Mrs. Afton's fate has been a much debated topic. In fact, it's even been debated if Mrs. Afton ever existed at all. We are led to believe, however, based on the clues we gather along the way from the games and the books, that it is very likely that some version of her existed. Whether she was married to William Afton, or was only his girlfriend, or perhaps his one-time lover. Mrs. Afton, or whatever her name might be, is believed to be the mother of William Afton's children, but we don't really know what happened to her after that. Did she leave William? Did she die? Did they get a divorce? In the book and story 1:35 AM from Fazbear Frights, we see an allusion to her with a connection to a line in Sister Location. Based on this story and that line, both of which potentially being clues, it seems as though Mrs. Afton may have actually died in Circus Baby's entertainment and rental in the Sister Location, possibly an event. The question is, was her death just a tragic yet unavoidable fate? Or were the animatronics responsible? Or was William perhaps himself behind it? If that is, after all, even what happened. Number 1. Evan. Crying Child's place in the Afton family, and even his very existence to some extent, has been debated for quite some time, but recently we finally may have made a breakthrough in terms of understanding who he is as a character, or at the very least, what his name is. Based on a potentially solved puzzle from the survival logbook, we've been led to believe that Crying Child may in fact be named Evan. However, it is possible that this isn't the solution we were meant to find, and that the puzzle still remains unsolved. But due to Evan being the name for a character who seemed to be the younger brother of Michael that appeared in Fazbear Fright's Blackbird story, The Real Jake, it seems like Evan may actually be the name and identity of Crying Child. Did we solve it? I think we solved it!
In 10, the Bite of 87. The Bite of 87 is one of the most mysterious moments in the entire FNAF series, and it was introduced in the first game, so we've been dealing with this thing for like nearly 10 years. Being introduced into the series in FNAF 1 from 2014, the Bite of 87 has remained one of the most debated points in FNAF history, and we can't quite agree on what happened. At first, we thought it was Golden Freddy who caused the bite, then Normal Freddy, then Mangle, then Fred Bear, then Toy Chica, then back to Mangle, and everyone has their different opinion on the subject, but for some reason, people also think that it's confirmed that the Bite of 83 from FNAF 4 is the Bite of 87. Which it isn't. And if you look up Bite of 87 on Google, you get pictures of the bite from FNAF 4, which is in 1983, which is, as I'm sure you can tell, confusing for our editors. I'm sure that you're seeing pictures of the incident now, honestly. Like, the Bite of 87 and 83 have been confused for ages, and they're still being confused to this day. Mostly because of Markiplier asking if that was the Bite of 87. Honestly, it's kind of frightening based on how many people get mad at me because I go against something MatPat said, but then also tell me that I'm wrong, that it's the Bite of 83, not 87, even though I agree with MatPat on that point. And at 9, the 2-eye theory. The 2-eye theory states that in FNAF 3's bad ending, there are 2 eyes lit up in the head and the back, which we assume to be Golden Freddy, to show that there are 2 souls inside the animatronic. This isn't the case, okay, and I'm just gonna tell you why. Firstly, it would be more difficult to tell that it was an animatronic head in the back if there was only 1 eye lit up, since all we see of this head are the eyes. And the second eye being lit up could very well just be a reflection from the first light, since it's so dark. Notice how Freddy also has light coming out of his other eye, but he doesn't have a second soul. Secondly, Crying Child wasn't introduced into the series yet, not coming until the next game that wasn't even going to happen until the community was disappointed in the Springtrap jump scare. Since this was supposed to be the end of the series, that's why we released the Souls in the Happiest Day minigame. Also notice that only 1 person wears a Golden Freddy mask in that minigame, and according to the official Freddy Files Updated Edition book, quote, you'll see an image of broken animatronics heads, each with a lit eye, meaning that Golden Freddy in the back only has 1 eye lit. And considering how this is the official guidebook to the series, we kinda need to take it as law. And at 8, Sparky the dog. In the early days of the first game's lifespan, someone began to spread rumors online about a hidden 6th animatronic named Sparky the dog. Sure enough, screenshots began to crop up on Tumblr of this secret animatronic. Of course it was Tumblr. Reportedly, Sparky the one-armed dog was a non-violent animatronic and would never attack the player, only appearing occasionally in the backstage doorway, hence why we never saw them. However, it was eventually revealed as a hoax by the creators, Tumblr users Kodai Bear and Win, with all the screenshots being photoshopped. I mean, I feel like that would have been pretty obvious, but I don't know. Did you ever think that Sparky was real? Like, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like, at this point, my knowledge of FNAF was limited to exactly what MatPat said, because I was terrified of anything horror related. Yeah, like even the Eddie Brock becoming Venom scene in Spider-Man 3 was terrifying, but Yeah, I mean, I played it. I played FNAF 1 on like the bus home from school, but I did it muted, so I didn't have to deal with the jump scares. Okay? There was a girl sitting next to me. I felt pretty badass. And at 7, Scooping 2, Electric Boogaloo. Michael's scooping, however, to find the next parts of the series as a whole. We learn that he's working to right his father's wrongs, and we think that he's been doing it the whole time, even though it could have been Henry. Check the link in the iCard for the theory on that. But Michael's scooping was different. Instead of him dying, we see him get filled with Ennard and then used as a skin suit to walk around in the world. We see his skin rot or bruise as it turns purple, drawing enough attention that Ennard thinks it's a better idea to roam the sewers as a mess of animatronic parts. But then he lets us know that he's coming after his father, so much so that once he traps him in Pizzeria Simulator, he stays there to make sure the deed is done, but it's not. And Michael gave his life in order for his father's reign of terror to end, but is this the last time we've seen Michael, or is always coming back hereditary? Only time will tell. Maybe reincarnation is a thing in the FNAF series. It very well could be. Scott's just pulling things out at this point. And at 6, Cassidy. In my personal opinion, I think the idea that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed is wrong, okay? Here come the comments, I know what's gonna happen. In my head, okay, there is way more evidence for Crying Child being the one you should not have killed. If you're interested in the reasoning for that, to actually see if I may have a point instead of just getting mad right away, please go check out that video. It's linked up in the iCard, either now or later. However, the main reason I believe it's Crying Child, aside from the rest of the evidence, is because William would have been the only one around for Crying Child to possess when he dies in the hospital. Cassidy was around the Golden Freddy animatronic, but unless William brought his work with him to the hospital, which is highly unlikely given the fact that his child's head was crushed in 1983, possibly before Golden Freddy was even created. So reasonably, if Crying Child was going to possess someone, it would end up being William. He would then come to see the horrible acts his father would commit 2 years later, and then intend on keeping him alive so that he could suffer for them. Since in the end, it was William's fault that Crying Child died, since he had superpowered Fredbear's jaw. Again, which is the only thing that makes sense. It's a mistake not to consider that a possibility, but I can already hear the comments now.
Number 5, who is Crying Child? Is Crying Child the third and maybe not even final sibling in the Afton family tree? Or is Crying Child some kind of red herring? Or some younger version of Michael that we just don't completely understand yet as to how it all fits in? Is Crying Child Evan, or is this name too some kind of mystery puzzle piece that belongs elsewhere? Is Evan even the name we were meant to find in Survival Logbook? I don't know. I feel like there is still so little that we know about when it comes to Crying Child. I mean, we don't even yet have an 100% confirmed name here. I don't see how this could come into play, but maybe Security Breach will have some more answers for us. I just really need some William Afton flashbacks to clear stuff up here, friends.
And at 4, Princess Quest. According to one very adamant viewer during my recent 24-hour live stream, okay, there's a theory going around that Matt had also talked about, now that everyone seems to believe, because again, Matt had talked about it, that the princess in Princess Quest is actually meant to be Cassidy. And while I don't agree with this theory, it's still a theory nonetheless, so I'll talk about it. I'll give its little moment here. This theory generates from some apparent files within one of the games, guessing that it would have been Security Breach since there are 3 Princess Quest games in that one compared to the FNAF VR mobile version where there's only 1. But apparently, according to this viewer, those files indicate that the actual name of the character is Cassidy. I don't know how they really indicate that, and I mean, like, I don't know how anyone found that. They wouldn't really elaborate. They just kept spamming that it was Cassidy, despite me saying that I don't care about that, because that's clearly not the case in my opinion, because like if you think about it, in the first Princess Quest game, that's when you get trapped by Glitch Trap, right? That's when you get possessed by Glitch Trap, and then you spend the next 2 games trying to break free. Like, the only reason I'd believe that it's Cassidy is for purely symbolic reasons, since Cassidy is trying to torture William, at least if they are the one you should not have killed, which again, I don't believe, which would end up giving her motive to free Vanessa from William's control. But that's the only reasoning that I'd be able to, like, think for this theory, which makes it seem more like a hypothesis to me. And again, we get captured by Glitch Trap in the first game, which clearly indicates that it's actually Vanessa. And honestly, this could be what Vanessa's doing in her head. Okay? Like, this is when Vanny's taking over and Vanessa's not in control, this could be what Vanessa's doing, trying to fight back, okay?
Number 3, 1997 plus 23 equals 2020. Math! Another huge clue that we get from Special Delivery, with the help of some basic math of course, is the year in which Security Breach likely takes place. We can piece together that Nessie, Ness, or Vanessa was born in 1997 based on her username. We then know that Vanessa A is listed as being 23 years old, and from there we can figure out, if we add those two numbers together, that if Vanessa is 23 in the present day, which we assume these emails are from, the Security Breach takes place in 2020, when Vanessa A would have likely gotten transferred and of course be 23. Now this could be a red herring, and a Security Breach could be set in a different year, either in Vanessa's past or her future, or perhaps Vanessa from Security Breach is not Vanessa A or Ness at all from Special Delivery. But that would be a lot of weird coincidences and misleads when it comes to what appears to be pretty direct clues, if you piece them together.
Penultimately, into number 2, character names. The names of various characters over the years have remained mysterious. Sometimes they don't have a name, other times an alias like the purple guy, or other times they just get random names decided by the community. However, in all of these instances they don't end up actually being canon. And something I've noticed a lot in the comments is the misuse of names that either have no origin or very weak origins and people believing them to be canon. One of the best examples right now is Crying Child and Mrs. Afton. Crying Child currently has 2 names that are really being used, Evan and Chris, although now there might even be Gregory, which is a whole other can of worms. But none of those names are canon, okay? And only one of them is an actual theory, and not even a strong theory at that. So far, they've only been able to find E, V, and A, and not the N in any solid fashion. And the whole Clara Afton thing is just very outlandish to me. Just because there's a name doesn't mean it belongs to someone, okay? Does that mean that like Crying Child's name is Vlad because the purple character was named Vlad, or is that William's new name? Like, no, guys, come on. Look, if you're going to apply those rules to Clara, you have to find someone who's named Vlad. Alright, that's the rules. And finally, into number 1, origins. Going along with the whole we don't know anything about Mrs. Afton thing, or names are being misused, we don't really know why Afton decided to start killing people. And more particularly, kids specifically. He could just be your good old run-of-the-mill psychopath, but some people assume that it's because his kids died. However, that is literally impossible, since his kids died as a direct result of him wanting to kill other kids. Elizabeth dies thanks to getting scooped by Baby that was specifically designed for that purpose. And Crying Child died after Elizabeth and as a result of an animatronic with too much bark in that bite. Since like I've been saying in other videos for ages, there were no spring locks that could have failed in the mouth since it was already in suit mode, so all the spring locks had been released. Also there'd be no spring locks in the mouth because it's an open mouth. So his children died as a direct result of him wanting to kill kids. It could have been that when his wife or baby mama or whatever Mrs. Afton was left him, that's what caused him to trigger, but we can't know that for sure. The truth is, we really have nothing to go off of as to reasons why William started killing, because it wasn't because of possession or his kids, because he doesn't learn about those until after he starts wanting to kill people, okay? Maybe a Fazbear Frights book will let us know when like the 12th one comes out with all the discarded ones. I don't know. And in 10, the discovery of Remnant. The discovery of Remnant is only really described to us in the original novel series, with William learning about the souls of the missing children being basically infused into the endoskeletons of the original 5 animatronics. He melts them down to make the fun times, but this is when his goal changes. Originally, he, from what we can tell with our limited information, was just killing for the sake of it. However, now he had a purpose. He wanted to find the key to eternal life, to immortality, whether it be to bring maybe an extra child back, or to keep himself in the land of the living. The moment William discovered Remnant, he totally changed his game plan. However, that's the importance to the FNAF story. To us, it could be when we discovered how Remnant was made in the Fazbear Frights books, when Dr. Phineas Taggart discovered that agony was the most powerful human emotion, and that the act of possessing something in the FNAF world was just your extreme agony latching onto a nearby object, which explains why it happened to the children, and then to William, which I'll talk about later on. And a 9, missing children's incident. The missing children's incident is really what started the FNAF series. It's also a tongue twister. It's a mystery that we all gravitated towards when we started looking into the first game, and it's the incident that really popularized the series, aside from it being terrifying. The incident has gone down in history as one of the scariest and most convoluted things in recent years, with whole threads being dedicated to why or how it happened, along with how William got away with it, since the suits were literally leaking body fluids like a rotting corpse would and no one checked them out. It's incredible how far the series has come from just that one moment, and it being the catalyst for everything else. That makes it pretty important and very deserving of our number 9 spot. And before we get any further, if you're enjoying this video or just like the FNAF content in general, be sure you're hitting that like button on this one and all the videos to come. It really helps us out and it lets us know what you want to see more of. And at 8, scooping. The first scooping of the series was that of Elizabeth Afton, the Afton family daughter. The one that was probably going to make a lot of mistakes in high school and college, but at least she wouldn't have been as bad as her father. But then she went and ignored him, resulting in her getting scooped by Baby and getting crushed, thus possessing the animatronic, which is freaking terrifying to begin with, but I think that Scott was trying to teach his kids to listen to him, honestly. This event, while not the start of William's killing spree, is a pivotal moment in the series as well, because while he discovered the remnant already, now he had a personal stake in the matter. His kid had possessed an animatronic, and the key to life in this remnant was also the key to keeping his daughter alive, and making sure that she could live forever, even if he used her to kill Henry in FNAF World, but that's beside the point. Her scooping is also what we believe made Crying Child scared of the animatronics and the inspiration behind the Nightmare animatronics stomach mouths, which ended up coming into play during the Crying Child's death later in the timeline. Probably the same week, if we're being honest. Also, the FNAF series is like 3 or 4 years younger than Skyrim. That's it. And it's 7, fan games. There have been multiple instances of people in the comments using points or story elements from FNAF fan games to try to prove my theories wrong. For example, a while ago, a YouTube user commented saying that Vanny's mask appears in a fan game called Aftermath. So my statement of her mask appearing in a DLC to a game that's meant to look back on past tragedies of the franchise, and that could mean that she's from the past, would have been false, even though Aftermath is a fan game that has no canonicity in the main series, which I don't understand, because like, why would you try and use a fan game to prove me wrong? Like, on a video that has nothing to do with that theory, no less. Like, he didn't even comment it on that video. He commented it on another video. Someone else even commented on yet another video where I included fan characters for context, since the main series didn't have 10, where they said fan games don't count since they're non-canon and are in a different universe. Which was trying to be a dig at me for using fan characters, but since there aren't 10 Springlock victims in the actual FNAF series, in the books or the games combined, I kinda had to. But this only supports my point. If I can't use fan games in a list, which I can because it's my list, you can't use fan games as evidence for a theory, and I don't do that either.
And at 6, Springlock. In FNAF 3, we watch as William Afton tries to save his own skin. He knows the animatronics are alive and tries to save himself by dismantling them in an effort to make sure they won't be able to, you know, stuff him into a furry suit. But in this action, as we see in the 8-bit minigames, he ends up releasing the souls of the characters. Well, I guess technically they aren't released, they just appear in an astral form or something, since they'd still be possessing the suits because he needs to melt them down, but yeah. This scares William because, you know, 5 of his murder victims are staring him down like Chica in a hot slice of pizza, so he does the one thing that he could think of, try and scare them back, by getting into the Spring Bonnie suit he used to lure them away in the first place. This suit makes him feel powerful, it's a confidence booster, it makes him feel like he's in control. A weird way to express a dom kink, but okay, I'm not judging. However, he does this so fast and the room was so moist and wet that instead of scaring them, he gets himself snapped. The spring locks fail and the suit shoots plenty of tiny and large bits of endoskeleton metal into his body, causing him to collapse and convulse, oozing blood like the kids in their suits. But this causes so much hassle because now, 30 years later, when he is set free, he can still kill. He isn't the frail old man that he should be. He has the strength of the animatronic behind him, and he's gonna use it.
Number 5, Vanessa A. Another huge clue that came from the emails and special delivery seems to indicate that Vanessa could indeed somehow be related to the Afton family. That comes from an employee listing where we learn, like I said earlier, about her transfer. We are given the name Vanessa A there, and that one initial for her last name, A, sticks out like a sore thumb. What else begins with A, you ask? Only one of the most important surnames in all of FNAF lore, that of William and his family, Afton. This has led fans to believe that Vanessa could actually be Vanessa Afton and has some direct relation to the family tree. But the question remains, if Vanessa is an Afton, just how is she related to William and the gang?
And at 4, Happiest Day. The Happiest Day minigame from FNAF 3 was planned to be the end of the series. Scott said that the game was meant to be the last, but people were disappointed with the Springtrap jump scare, so he made FNAF 4, which makes sense now since it's pretty much an overcorrection. That's why those animatronics are so damn terrifying and horrific, and why FNAF 4 is listed as the end of the original FNAF story. The souls at the time of FNAF 3's release are in fact set free, hence the good and bad endings, but come FNAF 4 and more so Sister Location, we learn that this isn't the case, since the remnant metal used to make the fun times is actually made of the remnant from the original 5 kids, which causes some interesting plot holes but could help explain a lot. Like, the children's spirits could have been released, but the metal was still infused with their agony perhaps, allowing it to be more conductive for spirits, hence why Elizabeth possesses babies so quickly, or something along those lines maybe, I don't know. The horrific implications of the original ending to the series make this one of the most important FNAF lore moments, especially if it had ended there. Imagine if it had. Imagine how simple the games would have been if it just ended in FNAF 3. And that was the ending. We set the spirits free and that was it. We were good. Didn't work.
Number 3, Vanny, victim or accomplice? With Vanny or Vanessa, there are so many questions. Are Ness, Vanessa, and Vanny even all the same person? Are they separate people? Or are some of the three of them the same and then some different? Are they like a pair of twin sisters? I would believe that. Do they have any kind of familial or romantic connection to William or the Aftons? But more important, is Vanny the reluctant follower reluctant because they are new to this world of darkness? Or because they simply don't want to be involved at all. I personally think that there is some kind of brainwashing or some sort of sinister force really going on that is taking control of Vanny, and Vanny is the victim. But the reluctance could simply be from an uncertainty that comes when, you're new to something, meaning that Vanny might be just a little bit more hesitant to begin with, but may be fully committed to the cause by the time Security Breach rolls around.
And ultimately, in number 2, The Man in Room 1280. While plenty of people brush these books off as just books, the story of The Man in Room 1280 is one of the most important pieces of lore we have gotten from this series. It answers a question that we've all had since FNAF 3. How does William keep surviving? How does he always come back? And while it may seem minuscule, this is the biggest hint that we've gotten in ages. Learning that William was possessed by the spirit of one of his victims explains more in the series than any Easter egg Scott had left us. I don't care that Funtime Foxy can mimic voices, or how the Scooper can inject a remnant. It mattered how William's signature line of "I always come back" is true, and this book delivered. It also explains how he came to possess a hard drive that got scanned into Help Wanted. It explains that since he was possessed, he was alive in FNAF 3, and that explains how he survived the fire in both FNAF 3 and FNAF 6. It showed us that everyone knows what he did despite not being convicted. It provided so much for us, and that makes it the most important piece of confirmed lore that we have. There is one moment that is more important, but we have nothing on it at the time of this recording. And that point is, finally, in number 1, the breaking point. The breaking point in the scenario is referring to the moment William started killing. We don't know when it was, we don't know why it was. To us, it's just always been a thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if there was an incident before that of the missing children's from the first game that was just his first kill. We don't know what drove him into killing, and there's no way that would have been the first, right? Nothing has been confirmed or even presented in the games. There are hypotheses that it was due to his wife or lover dying, perhaps due to childbirth, or that it was because one of his children died, but we know that can't be true unless he had another kid that we haven't seen, because he had designed animatronics to kill before his children died. There were really no indicators as to why he started on his mass killing spree. It could just be that he's insane and wanted to do it, or maybe he wanted to unlock the mysteries of life, or maybe it was just an accident the first time but then he got a taste for it. We don't know, and we don't even have any evidence to go off, so all of this is just hypothesis and guesswork. It can't even really be educated guesswork because we don't know enough about Afton himself to make a real connection. Like, we don't understand him as a person, if you kind of get what I'm saying. We know parts of his story, but we don't know what's in his brain, and that's what we would need to make an educated guess, at least from the crime shows I've watched.